Okay, good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining this session this evening from Sharklab Malta. Here we're going to be talking all about Filfla and the focus on everything you wanted to know, which lurks beneath. A very interesting subject. And we're just going to have a short introduction by one of our members and committee members, Kaylin, who was inspired to identify this as our first topic due to a number of reasons. So I'm going to pass over to Kaylin, who is going to give us a small introduction about why this particular topic was the one chosen for this evening. Over to you, Kaylin.
Hello everyone. Welcome to the open session talk about Filfla. My name is Kaylin Borch. I'm currently the Shark Adoption Coordinator and I form part of the committee. Today we shall be exploring the subject of Filfla. This is the first open talk session that we shall be doing out of a series of sessions we shall be hosting throughout the year. We chose Filfla as our first topic because it has been subject to many myths, rumors, and queries. This is because Filfla is a very isolated island, and for many years people have had many doubts about Filfla, and during awareness events in the past, people used to ask us questions about the island and whether the organization had conducted any research. And as a result, there's a lack of understanding about the true nature, geography, and history surrounding the isolated island and what goes around the island. Henceforth, me and the committee members of Sharklab Malta have agreed to and decided to host a public online session to address some of these queries. Some of these queries addressed will be if it's true that Filfla is a breeding ground for sharks, specifically the great white shark. There have been several large fossilized teeth of a prehistoric shark called the Megalodon. Does this suggest that Filfla, that Megalodon lived around this area? And moreover, what kind of marine species habit the waters of Filfla? These particular queries and more shall be addressed in this open talk session, whereby we will try hopefully answer any major queries about Filfla that's led to a lot of misunderstanding, and hopefully by the end of the session, the public will be more informed about this island, and therefore the public will have a more educated opinion about Filfla. If you have any queries or you'd like to ask something, you can do so at the near end of the session. Thank you.
Thank you, Kaylin. Okay, so just before I actually start, a little bit of, should we say, housekeeping for Zoom and Zoom people. The chat is located on the bar, usually located at the bottom of the screen. So if you have any comments or you wish to make any questions, please feel free to hit the chat button and actually type something, and we will respond to the questions at the very end. Because this is an open session, we're also recording this so that it can be used for future education, or we can share it with people who are unable to actually join us this evening due to the fact that Zoom does have a limited number of participants who can join. So without a further ado, let's start talking about Filfla. It's a very, very interesting place. It's steeped with a number of different stories, as Kaylin pointed out. There are many myths and mysteries around this island. One of the most interesting ones is the history. But if you're not from Malta, if you don't know where Filfla is located, here is the big blue arrow pointing to Filfla. Filfla is located approximately 4.8 kilometers off the coast, opposite Widiziri or Arlapsi, if you're familiar with Malta. And the big pointy blue arrow points to where Filfla is located. Okay. The map in the corner shows obviously Malta's location within Europe. So a right bang smack in the middle of the Mediterranean, which does make Malta a very interesting place and makes Filfla even more interesting, as I will explain as we go on. There are many legends about how Filfla first actually came to existence. One of them is that Filfla was created after a particular area in Malta was inhabited by very, very sinful, bad people. And God wished that this place be punished, and he picked up the earth and he threw it and destroyed it. But some angels managed to pull out a piece of it and threw it into the sea, therefore creating a little island, which then became known as Filfla. The area in question is something called the Makhluba, which is not far from the coastline opposite Filfla. Other suggestions, if you're familiar with the Maltese Islands, also bring in traditions relating to the building of the temples. So you're familiar with the temples on the coastline, which face out almost opposite Filfla, and it's believed that Filfla perhaps played some kind of role in the alignment of these temples. These legends and these questions are steeped in history, and unfortunately, we probably will never get to an answer in relation to the legends. However, scientifically and geographically speaking, we can start at looking how Malta formed and how the island of Filfla historically was connected, which is a little bit more sciencey rather than basically steeping in legend. So here we have two maps. The map on the left is showing Malta and the Maltese archipelago today. And on the right-hand side, you see the archipelago approximately 20,000 years ago. Filfla was originally connected to the Maltese Islands. And as the water level has changed over the years and the water level has increased, now Filfla stands alone as a pinnacle of limestone protruding from the sea off the western coast of Malta. When we look at further pieces or photographs, you'll notice that the island is very vertical in standing. It's approximately 60 meters above sea level. The top is approximately 350 meters in width and 280 meters in length. It's encircled by limestone cliffs along its perimeter, and there are large boulders which originated from the top, now resting along the edges. It makes it very and highly inaccessible. In fact, the island itself used to be much larger. During wartime, the British Navy actually used Filfla for target practice, and this continued into the 1950s, because if you view the island from the top, it actually looks similar to that of a ship. And through naval practice, they used to fire torpedoes and bombs in order to get the sightings on the ships and the planes aligned. So the island itself was originally much bigger, and the footprint of the island, which you can see around the boulders, is more to the size that it was originally. So the large boulders, some of them have now collapsed due to natural erosion, but many of those boulders have collapsed simply because they were hit by bombs and shells and missiles back in the earlier years, 30s, 40s, 50s, and Filfla now stands untouched by man and machine, shall we say. But what it does do, it stands as a pinnacle, and it's an amazing place. It's an amazing place because not only is it a pinnacle of rock standing on the western side of the islands, it's also home to a vast variety of bird life. And its original name, Filfla, is believed to have derived from an Arabic word naming Filfla, which translates to pepper. And this is due to its size and the shape as it's seen from the shore. It's a unique habitat for many animals and plants and birds. In fact, some of the earliest protection legislation was founded on the reasoning because birds use it as a place for breeding and a place for resting during migration. There are endemic species of lizards and there are endemic species of snails and plants on the island which are only found on Filfla. The bird colonies themselves are some of the largest colonies for certain species throughout the whole Mediterranean. So it's very, very, very important. In fact, during research trips out there and boat trips out there during the spring and the autumn migration of birds. Many raptors were seen resting, as well as many different other species of birds. The birds are not the only influence around Filfla. Filfla is not just a rock standing from the ground, it's surrounded by the beautiful Mediterranean. And dolphins have also been seen aplenty around the island. In fact, there is a company, Eco Marine Malta, which started to do tours around the island and other places around Malta. And one of the highlights was often seeing striped and bottlenose dolphins surrounding the island. As far as protection, the protected status for Filfla actually started back in 1988. There is still, sadly, no defined management plan. Permission has to be obtained to actually go onto the land in order to carry out any activities, and even in the waters surrounding the island, permits can be granted only for scientific or educational purposes. There is legal notices in place prohibiting berthing or navigation of craft within the area, within 1 nautical mile, and underwater activities, on-water activities, fishing and trawling are also, banned from this particular area. The notice was superseded in 1990 with additional permits relating to fishing vessels being implemented. Filfla is listed as a Natura 2000 site and is protected through not only the International Birds Directive, but also the Maltese law, the Malta Flora and Fauna Habitats Directives. This is the protected area which covers Filfla. So here we can see that Filfla is actually located right within the center point of the radius of this circle, which is approximately 1 kilometer in diameter. This whole area is protected primarily due to the bird regulations, but also due to the fact that during the wartime and after the war into the 50s, when many aircraft and ships used the island for target practice, many shells and munitions were actually left unexploded around the shores and in the waters around the island, making it potentially dangerous for anybody to go there. Subsequently, many of these areas have now been cleared, although the shells still exist. So why all the interest in Filfla? It's a beautiful rock. If you stand on the shore of Willisaria or Arlapsi and look out at the western shore across Malta, out into the ocean, Filfla stands tall. Many people have said historically white sharks, angel sharks, rays, skates, blue sharks frequent this particular island. And these sightings have all been, they've all gained our interest. So what can we find? What can we see? Why, what else is intriguing and interesting about this place? Let's look a little bit at some of the research that's been conducted around this island. They've been historically associated with sightings of large sharks, including Carcharodon carcharias, the great white shark. And a report generated to support application for protection actually identified confirmed sightings or reliable sightings or encounters, as shown in the map. Sightings reported with fair reliability. So the triangles indicate captures or reliable sightings. As you can see, there are 3 very closely associated to Filfla. And circles, encounters or sightings reported with fair reliability, so perhaps knowledgeable people. So there's been a number of sightings of white sharks, for example. And this was presented back in 2006 when they were drafting a management and monitoring plan, which sadly is still to be implemented, but it's part of the process. Many people will historically relate Filfla to the world's 2nd largest white shark ever landed. And this occurred back in 1987. Here are some of the images taken from Arlapsi initially, and then ultimately at Marsha Schlock, where the shark was landed. This particular great white shark, and it's true I don't like these images maybe as much as anybody watching this, but this particular white shark was not captured deliberately. It became entangled in fishing gear approximately 35 miles off the west of the Maltese Islands, behind Filfla. So although this shark has an association with Filfla, it was never actually landed or caught or observed directly around the island. It became the world's second largest white shark landed after it was measured at approximately 7 meters and estimates around about anywhere between 2 to 3 tons in weight. Now, size and the weight is something up for discussion. It's never been proven, and this was many years ago. It is certain for sure that this was a large female white shark. And one thing that is also known about white sharks is white sharks historically have been seen, identified, photographed, and recorded within Maltese waters, especially on the western side of the island. The island of Filfla is also on the western side, so white sharks and Filfla do have a connection. An interesting other encounter with a shark also occurred off the west of Malta back in 2011 when fishermen encountered a blue shark. Now, the fishermen were not trying to catch the shark. They were fishing for a number of other species, but this shark came along interested by the bait. And the fishermen were very curious because it appeared to have something entangled around its pectoral fin. On a closer look, they noticed that there was a plastic wrap, the kind of wrap you have around boxes or drinks cartons. It was actually entangled around the pectoral fin. And they used a hook on the boat in order to remove the plastic from this shark and successfully managed to release it from this plastic. What was also interesting about this particular encounter is not only did they help this particular shark, they also saw a second blue shark, slightly smaller, but they also encountered a small juvenile white shark, approximately 4 feet in length, in the same area. So sharks do exist and sharks do travel around our waters. And Filfla historically has been associated with sharks of a variety of different shapes and sizes. So our curiosity keeps building. Why is Filfla such an interesting place? Okay, eagle rays have been seen there. Common stingrays have been seen around there. So we've got rays of various species, we've got sharks of various species. Why are they interested in Filfla? Filfla is a very interesting landmass. Not only is it beautiful from the shore, when you start to look at the details of it, you start to see bathymetrically, so the way that the ocean wraps itself around it, it's also very interesting. The western side of the Maltese Islands is actually, it starts off relatively shallow from the coastline, but goes away gradually, but quite steeply into very deep water. And here you see an aerial view of the Filfla. The orange highlighted area is actually where it's connecting to the land. So there is an underwater reef system which connects Filfla to the mainland. And Filfla then protrudes from the top. And as you can see, with the gradients, similar to those you might see on a mountain or a hillside, the sides are very steep. And where the blue begins, the depth of water drops away significantly and very rapidly from 50, 75, 80, 135, 180, 140 meters and beyond very quickly. So there are deep trenches of water surrounding the far side of the island, but shallower waters and shallower slopes on the inner side. This could act as a potential nursery area, or these could be potentially areas where large species of sharks could hunt in the deeper waters to the west. Other scientific reports looking at the bathymetrics again highlights the connectedness of the island to Malta and the difference in the gradients of shallow water to deep water. Again, here we see how the island was connected to Malta, but now stands on its own with a very deep water in the green and graduating down to the purple. It's a very, very interesting place. Shallow water surrounded by steep rocks and deep water to the side. A perfect area, you would think, for large sharks to perhaps inhabit. What else is interesting about the island is the fact that Malta and the Mediterranean is a place where tuna are known to spawn during their cycles. So here we have a map. Okay, here we have a map of the Mediterranean, and the arrows indicate the way that the tuna actually travels into the Mediterranean, usually during April and May. Atlantic bluefin tuna, yellowfin tuna, all travel deep into the Mediterranean in order to actually spawn, where they reproduce. Now, not only do they travel deep into the Mediterranean, they're also followed by their predators. And their potential predators can include things like the shortfin mako. I'm just going to pause just one for a moment. If you're listening and watching the presentation, if you could please mute your microphone during the presentation, and then at the end we can take questions in relation to the presentation. Okay. So if you could possibly mute your microphone, that would be great. Thank you. So during the time between April and May, shortfin makos, blue sharks, and the great white shark are known and proven to actually travel into the Mediterranean. They're known to actually travel deep into the Mediterranean from the Atlantic. And they travel into the Atlantic basically following the tuna. This is one reason that sharks have also been associated with Filfla, because the tuna are known to pass around the Maltese Islands, and tuna have been sighted, seen, recorded, and even captured in the waters around and beyond Filfla, down into the Eastern Mediterranean and the Western Mediterranean. So the increase of shark activity would again potentially indicate the presence of sharks around Filfla. Is it a breeding area? Question marks, question marks. We think, we're not sure. But we think and we look. So shortfin makos, blue shark, great white sharks are known to enter the Mediterranean. These species also have resident populations within the Mediterranean, but their numbers increase dramatically during the time of the tuna spawning season between April and May. So sightings also increase. Sadly, captures of certain species also increase, even though within the Maltese Islands, all three of these species are protected. In some countries within Europe, sadly, they're not. So with all these possibilities and all these expectations of this landmass, this beautiful limestone pillar protruding from the sea off the western coast of Malta, what can you see there? What can we encounter? Well, actually, in 2012, 13, 14, and 15, Sharklab spent a lot of time examining the waters around Filfla. We did in total over the 3-year period 88 observational dives or snorkels, looking for the presence of sharks, looking for the presence of, in fact, any elasmobranch, so any shark, skate, or ray within these waters. And what did we find? We found many interesting things. We saw shells from the wartime. We saw what appeared to be wrecks, some, lost in the past, that were not really defined and never recorded officially. We saw an increase in marine life than we would normally encounter from the shoreline. Larger, braver, moray eels that were not afraid to actually swim in open water, when in the coastline they would hide between rocks and crevices. Damselfish, tiny around the shoreline compared to these much larger much larger examples around Filfla. Did we see any sharks? Did we see skates? Did we see rays? Well, actually, during the 88 observational studies, we encountered 8 different species. Many of them we were able to record with cameras and video, but not all. Some just stayed on the edge of vision. We could see them, we could observe them, we could identify them, but they weren't clear enough in a camera lens to be able to take some really good pictures. Common stingrays, Dasiatus pastinica, were probably the most commonly cited species. Marble torpedo ray, Torpedo marmorata, was again a very common species. 2 or 3 sightings of Dasiatus centrora, the Roughdale stingray, were seen. The pelagic stingray was only seen on 1 occasion. Cownose rays, similar to the species you might encounter at the Malta National Aquarium, was seen swimming. Eagle rays, Myliabatis aquila, which are commonly seen in dives around Tikawa and other areas around the Maltese Islands, sometimes confused with their relative Atomylius bovinus, the bull ray, with its distinctive striped back. Bull rays were also seen at Filfla, and on 1 occasion, on the boat trip from Filfla back to the mainland, a large mobula was seen. However, the turbulence in the water meant that the photograph became a beautiful picture of a turbulent sea, and the ray was swimming gently and probably serenely underneath. Any sharks? During our observational service, sadly not. But does it mean they don't exist there? Does it mean they don't travel there? Does it mean breeding grounds or not? It's a question. We don't know. We were only there on 88 occasions. Maybe on the 89th we would have encountered a shark. But here's some images of some of the marine life that we did encounter. Some of the seascapes, the amazing seascapes that you can actually experience around this beautiful island of Filfla. Moray eels, Muriana helena, poking their heads out of holes, sometimes swimming freely. In fact, on 1 occasion, during one of the research dives, we were able to release a moray eel which is entangled in a hook and a line sitting on the top of the rock at approximately 35 meters. We went down. We observed a very strange behavior, because normally we would experience moray eels hiding in holes or swimming rapidly away from a discerning dive. But this particular moray eel sat and sat and sat. And then we saw the line, then we saw the hook, a piece of fishing gear discarded by a passing fisherman who entangled whilst or was simply scared away by authorities, perhaps, who knows. Fortunately, we were able to cut the line, release the moray eel, and shortly afterwards, it bolted for the safety of the hole. Parrotfish, often seen around our coastal waters here in huge numbers, along with damselfish, twice the size that you would experience in our normal coastal waters around Malta and Gozo. Damselfish in their masses, along with parrotfish, along with rainbow wrasse, along with peacock wrasse, along with many, many, many species of fish. Common stingrays, by far the most common species of Elasmobranch, seen around the island during the research studies. Sometimes sitting on the sand, sometimes concealed under the sand. The only visible trace, an ice spot. However, sometimes the algae settles, and when a stingray settles and disguises itself, it leaves itself a little bit open to the observer, because it leaves a white, clean patch of sand on its back, surrounded by the green algae-strewn sand, as you can see in these pictures. Sometimes common stingrays swimming over rocks and reefs, or simply swimming across sand between foraging. And sometimes we disturb them and they turn and they swim, and we capture them in beautiful detail. Here we have a picture of a diver taking some video of a common stingray. Some of the sandy areas were abundant with 10 or 12 different stingrays all at the same time, far more than we would find in our local coastal waters. A very interesting and beautiful place to be. The common stingray launching itself from the sand and taking the sand away with it as it flees a dive with a camera. Torpedo rays, especially the marble torpedo ray, were also common. So here we have a picture of a marble torpedo ray, remarkably elegant, remarkably flat in comparison to the common stingray. In fact, I apologize for my description, but if you like Star Trek, I always akin the idea of a torpedo ray being a little bit like the USS Enterprise, its large disc being pushed by the engines of its caudal fins, compared to the graceful, undulating wings of the common stingray, or the beautiful flying motion of an eagle ray or torpedo ray. In fact, torpedo rays can be a little bit clumsy, and often we observe them bashing into stones and seagrass. Quite interesting to see. They spent many times under the edges and overhangs of the rocks as we observed them, and sometimes we were able to uncover them by seeing the circular area of sand disturbed as they settled, with only the eyes protruding. Filfla is a magnificent and very, very interesting place. If you ever have the opportunity to dive there, with a permit, of course, I would recommend it. Sharklab plans to do more studies there. What we found so far was just a snapshot, an idea of a place that holds many, many, many unanswered questions. We blew a few myths away. If sharks breed there, we haven't seen any sign of it. If sharks live there in abundance, sadly, we've proved them wrong. If we cast our minds back 40, 50 years, the population of sharks, skates, rays, like many marine creatures, was way, way higher than it is nowadays. Sadly, due to overexploitation, changes in climate, the impact that we've had on the marine ecosystem, these numbers have disappeared and declined significantly. Perhaps once upon a time, Filfla was an area where the great white shark bred, or many other species of sharks bred. But nowadays, with the numbers massively reduced, we have to hope that maybe, with enthusiasm and with determination, making a difference and better understanding these creatures, we can start to bring back the environment that they need to thrive. Not only for them as predators, but also for the prey upon which they feed. They are the masters of our oceans when I talk about sharks, but they're one part. Our oceans not only need sharks, they need the skates, the rays, and all the marine life which calls the blue on our planet home. And the only way that we can start to make a difference is by changing the way that we treat it, respecting it, enthusing people to learn more about it, encouraging people to explore it, taking records of things, making details of things, protecting things where things need protected. And ultimately, and hopefully, our oceans can be the living, breathing place on our planet that they once used to be. We can hope. It's something which Sharklab is working towards. And each participant this evening, I'm hoping, also has the same mindset, that we individually can make a difference. Bring shark skates rays back, bring the blue planet back to being blue. As we leave, for the moment, this beautiful island of Filfla from discussion, now we open the floor to questions. If you wish to ask a question, if you can either type it in the chat or alternatively raise a hand, which is an option if you select, I'm now going to work out what it is. If you select, because I'm sharing the screen, so I'm not seeing what everybody else is seeing. I'm just going to stop sharing the screen just for a moment. Okay. At the bottom of the screen, you have something called reactions. So if you click on reactions, you can raise a hand, just like I have done now, if you have a question. So before going back to sharing the screen, I'm going to leave it now in gallery view. So if anybody would like to raise a hand to ask a question, and then I will identify each one of you, and we will try and answer each question. Vanessa, thank you for the comment. Thank you very much. Katya, how can we get a permit to dive around Filfla? The permits are something which you have to apply to ERA for. They are very, very, very careful at who they give permits to. Historically, they used to offer them to dive centres once a year at no cost. Now they offer a cost or a charge in order to get a permit. I am hoping once the, so let me put my hand down. I'm hoping that once the current COVID situation actually drops and the situation becomes a little bit more flexible for participants to take part in activities, that Sharklab will be looking to reapply under the same way that we applied for the permit, which was basically to allow us to research the island at any point for a duration of 12 months. So if you're interested in participating in a dive or a snorkel around Filfla in order to be part of gathering information and researching, then feel free to contact us independently or send your contact details to info@sharklabmalta.org saying I would be interested in. And obviously when we apply for a permit, the permit, then we can contact you, or we can make a public notification through our Facebook group that we will be commencing Filfla surveys once again. Okay, yes, of course, Katja. The email is info. In fact, I'll type it into the chat box. So info@sharklabmalta.org. Okay, and that will go through to our secretary, Marlene, and she will then be able to disseminate and move the emails to the respective people. Okay. So from Hawaii P30 Light, so no one can go closer to Filfla than 1 nautical mile. That's currently correct. Filfla is currently protected by 1 circle of 1 nautical mile. In order to get a research permit, or in order to actually enter these protected waters, it can only be done for education or alternatively for scientific research. I can see here somebody's unmuted the microphone. Does anybody, okay, let me just scroll through. Okay, does anybody else have questions? No questions. Okay, Ella, there's a film done by PBS some years ago. They had a journalist and cameraman on Filfla, quite interesting. Okay, so this presentation, thank you, Ella. This presentation was actually done, as you would have seen, on a PowerPoint. At the end of the PowerPoint, I've actually done and added a number of references. And this PowerPoint we will make available from the website. So if you want to download it, you're more than welcome to. The links for the images that were shared on the PowerPoint are on the back. And there will also be added some links for videos that you may find very interesting. I'll come to you in just 1 second, Zach. For example, in trying to think what year it was, 1980 something, there was a very interesting documentary called Track of the Tuna, which was produced by a German director, which was following tuna from the Straits of Gibraltar through the Mediterranean, including around Malta. And they stopped off at a number of different locations, including Malta and around Filfla, where some footage was taken with Alex Sharkman or Alex Buttigieg, showing some of the marine life around Filfla. And tuna were, the video was primarily about the tuna, but there was some footage about sharks and rays in there. Secondly, there was also, more recently, as part of a project controlled by Alan Dayden, who many of you may be familiar with, through the University of Malta. He was part of a project called the Panacea Project. And the Malta Airport Foundation actually sponsored a video looking at what they called Malta's marine parks. Now, Filfla is not actually a park as such. It is a protected area. It's an area of scientific interest, and it's an area of protected interest, primarily because of the bird colonies and the birds which live there. But the Malta Airport Foundation actually produced a very, very interesting video with some groundbreaking footage and drone footage of the top of the island and underwater footage using high definition, high resolution cameras, and captures many images of rays and skates that we saw during our observational studies, and they also were able to capture using high definition cameras. And it's a really beautiful video, also highlights the marine life, and it gives a little bit of the history also about the way the island was used back in wartime as, sadly, you know, as an area for target practice. But the area itself is fascinating. The underwater world there is like no other. I've had the pleasure to dive there not only during daytime, but at dawn and dusk. And it's like no other place. There is no light pollution like you might experience around Malta. When you dive into the dark waters around Filfla, it's black. The only thing you see is what you illuminate with your torch. At the end of the dive, the boat puts lights, you return to the boat. But apart from that, there's no interference from humanity. It's a beautiful, beautiful place to be. I definitely want to go back there. So the research will continue with the point. So like I say, if you're interested, then please do send on your contact details to the info at, and we will keep you in touch with that. I'm just scrolling through the chat here. So is it true that certain shark species in the waters near Filfla have been on the decline, or has it stayed the same? And if they have in fact been on the decline, which of these species and what caused them to migrate elsewhere? Question from Zachary. The problem actually is it's very difficult to know exactly which shark species did live around Filfla, because nowadays there are none living there. Traveling past perhaps blue sharks occasionally, white sharks are being sighted. It's likely, in reality, that many species of smaller deep water sharks and coastal water sharks used to exist along our coastlines. Smoothhounds, or species of the mustelus family, which are coastal species, probably frequented Maltese waters. But sadly, with overexploitation, overfishing, not only from commercial fisheries, but from recreational fisheries, have taken these numbers down to virtually zero. It's possible that the warming water of the coastal waters around Malta have also changed the preferences of habits of certain species. If you look at the website, you'll notice the Sharklab Malta website, you'll notice that there are listed 35 individual species of sharks which have been currently or historically documented in Maltese territorial waters. Those also include species such as the smooth hammerhead, Sphaerina zygana, which the last record I have was in 1984, again on the western coastline, and this was sighted by a boater who was travelling towards the cliffs at Dingley. So between Dingley is on the same side as obviously Filfla. So it's possible that hammerheads may have been there, white sharks may have been there, blue sharks may have been there, as well as many other coastal species. But due to the overall decline of shark species, the numbers are now almost non-existent. Do you have any more videos about Malta? Says iPad. Actually, you can look at the Sharklab Malta YouTube site. We have a number of different videos relating to the organization. You can check out the website. Also, like I say, we will be posting this PowerPoint on the Sharklab Malta website, along with a number of different videos, which are relevant to this particular presentation. There has also been several, I think 3, 4, maybe 5 different videos posted recently, or at least in the last weeks, on the Sharklab Malta Facebook group and the Facebook page, which are building up to this presentation this evening, talking about Filfla. So there is some more information there. But be careful what you read when you read and do a Google search about sharks around Malta, because not everything you read is really, really true or really so precise. I read an interesting article the other day saying there's been 4 shark attacks around Malta, but actually that's not really true. One of those reports was for a surfboarder off Slima Coast a few years ago. And I also saw the photographs, and I actually got the photographs from the police, and one-tooth sharks don't exist. So although it was recounted as an attack, it was nowhere near an attack. So just be careful what you read. But the documentaries that are available about Filfla are interesting, very interesting. Okay, looking at Darren, if I understand correctly, you mentioned that some species are observed to be large in their size around Filfla. Do you know the main reasons behind this? Okay. The species I was making reference to were parrotfish, damselfish. This could simply be due to an increase of food availability. It could also be due to less exploitation or interference by people. Because one thing that we know is that if you create a lot of disturbance in a particular area, you not only affect the fish themselves, you also affect the food and the food availability. This could be one of the reasons. It's difficult to know exactly, but Filfla is quite unique. It's not as good as it could be. Unfortunately, illegal activities do still occur there. But what we do know is that it's less exploited than everywhere else around Malta. So it's still a really beautiful example of how Malta and our Maltese waters could really be. You know, so it's a very, very interesting place. Looking at Jennifer, how long has it been diving Malta sports, and how is the biodiversity locations compared to the Caribbean? Have you personally seen a noticeable change in biodiversity of wildlife behavior in your time in Malta or diving in Malta? Actually, I have seen a difference around Malta. I would say that the abundance of marine life has increased in places and decreased in places. But unfortunately, I haven't been fortunate enough in order to be able to dive the Caribbean and many other areas in order to make a comparison. But if you go to some areas around Malta, the marine life is actually doing very well. If you go to others, the marine life levels are very low. And that could be because they're easy to get to, easy to exploit. There's a number of different factors. So it's a little bit difficult to answer that question completely, especially about the whole biodiversity. Are there any ruins of buildings on the island of Filfla? From Kenneth. Historically, yes, there used to be a church. And there are historical stories also that during the time of the plague in Malta, a family actually moved from the mainland and spent a number of months, if not a year or so, living on the island of Filfla during the plague, and then returned to Malta once the plague had passed. To the best of my knowledge, the only building on there is a church. If you do a little bit of research focusing on Filfla itself, there is the details of the name of the church. And from what I read recently, there is a member of the Catholic Church from the mainland of Malta who periodically actually goes over to Filfla, but it's only very periodic because it's protected, so it has to be orchestrated, etc., to keep something going on there for the church. Mentioned dolphins. Has there been any large whale sightings? Donna. I'm not sure. It's possible. Dolphins and whales are cetaceans, and cetaceans exist all the way around our Maltese islands. Striped dolphins, Risso dolphins, bottlenose dolphins. Actually, within the Mediterranean waters and the waters around Malta, sperm whales and a variety of species of whales have been heard, if not sighted. If you do, Donna, directing at you, if you actually do a little bit of a search around the project Life Bahar. Life Bahar was a project instigated by the authorities in Malta to look at the increasing of marine protected areas around the Maltese islands. And one of the things they were actually looking to focus on was looking at dolphins and other cetaceans, as well as turtles, and also seabirds, to see if there were any particular areas where they tended to frequent. Now, Filfla does see sightings of dolphins periodically. In fact, Malta, if you're in the right spot at the right time, does actually have quite a number of different pods of dolphins traveling around. As far as large whale sightings, you'd maybe have to look into the Life Bahar project to see if they have anything specifically reported. On that, I'm not quite sure. We had a user. Are there any corals present around Filfla? Well, Filfla, like I say, is a very interesting place, and there are a number of different coral species which do exist in Maltese territorial waters. The most common being peacock's coral, which is actually a white soft coral which you can find in many of the shallow bays around the island. There are some hard corals present in the deeper waters around Filfla, but due to my speciality and not my preference, but my knowledge more of fish and sharks and skates and rays, although I've seen a number of different species of corals, I'm not in a position to actually point out exactly which names they belong to. If you, however, go on to, again, through Alan Dayden, he produced through the University of Malta a sequence of books talking about the different things that you might encounter around the Maltese Islands. Some of these books were highlighting on different species of fish. Some were focused on different species of jellyfish, which is now a separate project, which is called Spotted Jellyfish, which has been continuing and is now gathering a lot of information on blooms throughout the year. There was some books looking at stenoforms as well as jellyfish. There was also some information on different types of corals and seagrasses and algae. I don't have the knowledge on the individual species, but I'm sure if you do a search through Alan Baden as a reference, you may be able to encounter those books and you may be able to find out that information. Okay. From Ella, have you seen any whales in your travels? Are we talking about travels around Malta? Or are we talking about travels in general? I saw a pilot whale. I was very fortunate to see a pilot whale on the catamaran coming back from Sicily towards Malta. However, that was close to Sicily. I have seen dolphins. I've seen a number of different species of dolphins. So perhaps there are some large whales. But let's also consider this. When we have an image of a shark, we tend to have this image of the shark's pectoral fin, dorsal fin breaking through the surface of the water. But actually, very, very few sharks swim like that. The vast majority of the time, they actually swim below the surface, not breaking the surface at all. So it's possible that even when you stand on the shore of Maltese Island or you look out towards Filfla or anywhere, perhaps a shark is there that we don't know. The ocean and the Mediterranean around us is a beautiful place. One of the reasons that the oceans and the seas on our planet have been so mysterious is that we can't see what's under the surface from the land. You have to go in and you have to explore. And this is one of the beauties of, going under the surface. You get to see what's happening. You get to experience a completely different world, a completely different planet. So it's possible whales are traveling around our Maltese waters, yet we can't see them. It's also true that perhaps sharks a little closer than we say, without wanting to scare anybody. But perhaps sharks are a little closer than we think, but we can't see them. It's a question. Moving on to Simon Kutaya. Have you ever seen what you think could have been Isulfo, the large shark in Maltese folklore? Have you ever seen what you think could have been Isulfo? I've seen many large sharks. Unfortunately, most of them at the fish market, which is a sad place, but one place where Sharklab Malta gathers most of its data on sharks landed by Maltese fishers and sharks which exist in Maltese waters. It's Filfla. It's a mumbly. I'm not really sure of this particular shark in Maltese folklore. I will do my own little bit of research on this because I'm curious. I personally have been blessed with, shall we say, blessed with the opportunity to assist a large shark back into the water. Back in 2016, a blue shark was washed into the shore along Pembroke. And after several hours, we managed to safely put it back in the water. Sadly, another story of a large shark, Chikawa, Alopius supercilius, big eye thresher shark. Sorry, Alopius, get me Latin right. Alopius vulpinus, the big eye thresher shark, was actually entangled and got itself stuck in the rocks in Chikawa. We were called to that, and I went and assisted with the AFM. And this shark was 3.5 to 4 meters in length, had been entangled in some fishing gear, got frightened, and tried to go through a hole that unfortunately was a dead end. Sadly, it suffocated because, as many of you will know, certain species of sharks do need to travel in order to breathe. Sadly, this particular shark was one of them, and it suffocated. So big sharks do exist in our waters, but they're rare to see, which is a good thing, because if we don't see them, we can't hurt them, perhaps. But if we can see them, maybe we can help them. It's a mixture of thoughts. Moving on to Simon, wouldn't those be swordfish or tunas with their dorsal and caudal fins breach the surface? Okay, sometimes we do get reports of sharks, or what people think of shark sightings. And sometimes when you look at a video or a picture, you kind of look at it and go, oh, it's a shark. Maybe because you want it to be. But upon closer analysis, what you often find is that there's a dorsal fin without a trailing caudal fin. So you see the dorsal fin breaching the water, but there's no distinctive tail pushing it through the water. And a number of photographs that have been seen and analysed have been either tuna or swordfish or even the sunfish, which have often been mistaken for sharks because of the way they breach the surface, but they don't have the same distinctive shark movement which would identify them as being a shark. Moving on to Ella, has a shark ever attacked anyone? Question mark. Next to Filfla, question mark. Okay, let's go to the second part first. I am not aware of any shark-related incident around Filfla at all. Has a shark ever attacked anyone? Presumably we're talking around the Maltese Islands. Some would say historically there are 4 reports. I would say historically possibly 2. But the 2 that I'm possibly talking about were back in the 1800s, before people really knew. So again, they're slightly skeptical. The story which is in most people's mind when it comes to sharks in Malta relates to the story of a certain Captain Smedley back in 1956, who disappeared in strange circumstances in St. Thomas Bay. Now, it's possible a shark was never involved in this incident. In fact, it's likely a shark was never involved in this incident. But back in 1956, what did we know about sharks? Actually, a lot less than we know now. Shark research didn't really start until the late 60s, 70s. Some research was done before, But the majority of shark research started from the 50s, 60s, 70s onwards. And now we know so much more than we ever could have done before. Remember what I mentioned before? We look out at the ocean and the sea. What do we see? We see a surface. We don't know what's existing underneath. Since the 40s and 50s and 60s and onwards, sharks have become more interesting to research, to study, and ultimately, and sadly, to capture, because as the population grows, the demands on the ocean as a resource for food has also increased, and sharks have become part of the food chain. So, if we go back to shark attacks, the story of 1956 is questionable. There were some reports in the 80s that blew that kind of away, that it was more something to do with secret services than it was to do with the shark. So in relation to, has anyone ever been attacked around Malta, and it's been categorically proven that it was a shark that was the cause of the incident? Actually, my answer would be no. There has not been one case where it has been categorically proven that a shark has been responsible for an incident around Malta. There are stories, speculation, but not definitive proof. And as far as next to Filfla, no. What was the biggest shark you've ever seen? From Justin. Actually, the biggest shark I have ever seen was 4.2 meters. It was a common thresher shark, and sadly, it was landed at the fish market. The largest shark I've seen living and swimming in the water was actually around about 3.5 meters, and it was a blue shark during one of Sharklab's activities out on a boat in the middle of nowhere, approximately 10 miles from Malta. Malta was somewhere in the distance, and we were putting chum in the water trying to attract sharks if it was possible, and a blue shark came along. We were able to see it, but sadly we weren't able to capture any pictures of it. But it was there. Obviously, bigger sharks exist. Whale sharks, basking sharks. I haven't had the privilege to be in the water with those yet in the wild, but who knows? Ella, is Filfla a small place or a big place if you can go close to it? It's approximately 350 meters wide by 250 meters long, 60 meters tall. It's quite big, in fairness, when you get close to it. But compared to many other places, it's quite small. It's a pillar of rock. In fact, Filfla also has a sister island, Filfleta. Filfleta is a small outcrop of limestone, which is attached to Filfla. So the island actually is made of two rocks rather than just the one. But in relatively speaking, when you get close to it, it's quite imposing. If you're close to the edge and you look up 60 meters, it's quite a long way. So yeah, it's cool. Are there any underwater caves around Filfla? Yes, there are. There are many, Simon. In fact, part of the Life Bahar project was to identify the presence of certain types of habitat which had never been mapped or recorded previously, in order to gauge whether they required certain levels of protection or not. And a number of caves, overhangs, certain coral systems were identified not only around Filfla, but around many other areas of the Maltese Islands. And these were all part of the results from the Life Bahar project. So yeah, many of the underwater caves around Filfla are actually at a technical diving depth beyond 40 meters. So although there are one or two entrances and partial caves, there are some larger cave networks, but they require technical diving skills in order to safely penetrate them. Not something that I would personally recommend, because I personally have no skill or knowledge, not skill, but I have no knowledge of the requirements for technical diving. So you would need to speak to other professionals in relation to that. Looking at Another question from Zachary, just pinged out of the way, where let's get it back. What kind of research did Sharklab Malta carry out in Filfla? Essentially, we were trying to identify the presence of sharks, skates, and rays living or traveling within the 1 nautical mile area around Filfla. Sharklab Malta also carries out a lot of other research, which you can find the information out on the website. But in relation to Filfla, we were trying to prove or disprove the presence of sharks around Filfla as a breeding area, something that Kaylin introduced at the beginning. It's a question that we often get asked. Is Filfla a breeding area for great white sharks? I would love it to be. Maybe historically it was. But currently there is no evidence to prove it. And during the 3 years of research and the 88 different research activities we had there, we never actually identified sharks in the waters. Maybe we're there at the wrong time. Who knows? Okay. So it was an observational study. It was the idea was to gather information through visual recognition and recording through cameras and video for later analysis if we had any queries in relation to species identification. From Gary, have you found any skate eggs? Relating to Filfla, no. Relating to skate eggs in general, we have had sightings of skate eggs, but they tend to be deposited again at technical depths of 40 meters plus. We've seen skate eggs at Duera in Gozo. We've had sightings of skate eggs around some of the deeper wrecks. The Imperial Eagle, for example, I think is one of the deep wrecks, and a number of other sites around the Maltese Islands. Skate eggs have been seen deposited on the seafloor, but these have all been greater than 40 meters, so not easily accessible. Kaya, Piccinino, what type of sharks are there? There, I'm guessing you're talking about Filfla again. That's the subject of the night. There is the possibility of encountering a number of species. During our research there, we didn't have the fortunate opportunity to encounter them. However, blue sharks have been seen around short fin makos, have been seen around. There are reports of white sharks historically. Blackmouth cat sharks have been documented there according to one video. So there is a possibility that there are sharks in the waters around Filfla, but we don't have any definitive proof as yet. It's something that I would like to go back and do further research on in order to keep gathering more information from around this beautiful island. Cody, in your opinion, what was the most incredible find during a dive around Filfla? Interesting question. I'm not sure if it would necessarily count as an incredible find, but the most interesting find was part of an aircraft, which I had no idea there was any particular wrecks there. I found the cockpit and partial propeller protruding from the sand on one side of the island of Filfla. I had no idea it was there. That was quite fascinating. One of the most other incredible things that I've seen there is more of a sad case, because although it is a protected area and fishing is not supposed to take place there, there is a lot of discarded fishing lines, sadly stranded between rocks, entangled across boulders around the island. And I guess it would be an incredible find. At 35 meters, I found a large clump of, a large collection of fishing nets. And actually within the fishing nets, sadly, there was, I think, 8 or 9 slipper lobsters. And we spent, buddies and I and other divers, we spent 30 additional minutes underwater in order to cut the net and ultimately release those slipper lobsters from the net and release them back into the water. So the incredible find, I guess, was the aircraft, but other things that were incredibly interesting and sad, should we say, was a fishing net. And what I will also do, additional to placing the PowerPoint on the website in order to be able to, if you want to download it, it's absolutely fine. We produce 3 reports for the 3 years of research studies that we did at Filfla. These were reports on the observational studies, including what we saw, the planning behind it, what the methodology was, the reasons behind it, and also some photographs and details on things such as species, marine life, but also on some of the more interesting or sad interesting things, such as discarded fishing gear, such as the story of the recovery of the mott eel, which was entangled in a hook, which is discarded. Photographs of bundles of fishing line. We estimated after the 3 years of research, we probably removed anywhere between 350 to 500 meters of discarded line from Filfla just during our research dives. And there was a lot more, and especially at depths which were too challenging or unsafe for the researchers to actually undertake to remove. So not only were we there doing the observational study, we were also there, and if we could, we were also taking away the impact that humans were having on that area also. Ella, are there any living things on it like monkeys? No. There are no monkeys on Filfla. There might be monkeys in Malta. So I think monkeys is the word you were trying to put. On Filfla itself, the main island itself is basically sheer limestone. On the top and in the scree is where the bird colonies are. Storm petrels, different species of shearwaters, raptors, and all sorts of birds use it as a landing spot during their spring and their autumn migration. It's fascinating. We've been there with boats diving to see 20, 30, 40 buzzards flying around, herons, egrets, flamingos, all sorts of different amazing birds, stopping there, taking a breather and a refresh before they continue their journey. Absolutely fantastic. But Ella, no monkeys. Jennifer, answer your question. Does a lot of rubbish from the mainland make its way to Filfla above or underwater? Actually, what we found is that there is very little rubbish around Filfla. It's an outcrop of land. It's again located 4.8 kilometers from the mainland. And because the reef actually drops away from the mainland and then it goes down into deeper water surrounding it, any rubbish that tends to come off the land from Widdy's or from our Lapsey or from that side of the coastline will tend to get simply pushed away by the currents in either a northerly or a southerly direction. We found very, very little evidence of significant pollution. An occasional piece of plastic, an occasional bottle, an occasional something that may have been dropped by somebody from a boat, for example, who may have been passing or traveling close to the protected area, but not necessarily traveling to the island. So actually, rubbish there isn't so much of an issue. The biggest issue, as far as rubbish, is disposed fishing gear, which is something that I was just talking a moment about. Ella, did you ever go by air to see Filfla? No, I didn't. The closest I ever got to seeing the top of Filfla was in the Airport Foundation video done through Alan Baden, where they actually flew a drone over the top of the island, which is the first time you get a really clear and distinctive look as to what the top of Filfla actually looks like and how the birds use it. So I would seriously recommend, after this or at some point, go and have a look at the Malta Airport Foundation Panacea video about Filfla. It's very interesting. There's a number of species of skates and rays which feature in their underwater footage. And they came to Sharklab and asked for advice because they knew we'd been researching there. Where were the best places to go? Where were the best places to get footage that they could use in the video? and they found those, and they've got some really great footage. So, never been over there, but the drone footage of the film, fantastic. But Simon, you mentioned whale and basking sharks. Have there been any record of these species in recent times? I would assume that once baskings have a Maltese name, I guess that at least some were present at some point in time. It's true. In fact, whale sharks don't exist in the Mediterranean, so we can kind of like blow the whale sharks away. Basking sharks were historically documented in Maltese territorial waters, hence the fact they also have a Maltese name. However, due to the change in the water temperature, which affects the food they feed on, i.e. algae and algae blooms, the algae blooms now tend to frequent further north than Malta itself, towards the coastline of Italy, around Sicily. And many basking sharks actually feed, forage, and actually give birth in the Adriatic, which is obviously to the side of Italy. So not so far away. They used to exist. So the largest species we would have historically documented around Malta would be the basking shark, growing to a length of around about 10 to 12 meters. I personally don't have a record in recent times, so I can't put my finger on the date exactly when the last one was recorded, but they have been recorded. Joe, thank you. Sorry you had to leave, but thank you for coming along. Katya, thank you, very informative. Thank you very much. Justin, in the past, there were any interesting animals living on the island? Actually, I'm not really sure. I know that on Filfla itself, there used to be, or there still is, species of geckos and obviously the bird colonies. But remember, historically, Filfla used to be part of Malta. So what existed in Malta perhaps also existed on Filfla for a period of time until the water levels changed. March and Power, how often do you get any reports of illegal fishing activity around Filfla? We don't personally get reports. We are aware of it. And during the 3 years of research, which obviously goes back a number of years, but during the 3 years of research, we often saw examples of illegal fishing. We recovered a discarded or hidden spear gun and spears. We've recovered many different types of fishing gear from there, and we know that it goes on. Sadly, what happens is that the small boats from Wirizia often drop people off, who then spend the day fishing, who then go and pick them up later. So they're very difficult to spot because you're talking about an individual on an island 5 kilometers away. So it's very difficult. Hopefully in the future, a management plan and an enforcement plan will be implemented for all of the marine protected areas around the Maltese Islands, and enforcement will be part of that, which will also help, hopefully, to stop illegal fishing practices taking place in areas such as Filfla and the other areas. Kevin, amongst shells and bombs and other answers, I once came across a torpedo while diving the sharks. I have records stating a German World War II Stuka dive bomb being in deep water near Filfla. Never came across that. Now, some reason Filfla has come off limits to bona fide dives as permits have no longer been issued. It's probably a work in progress, in fairness, Kevin, because obviously, historically, it was MEPA, then it went to ERA, and the legislation and the protection status is a work in progress. The management plan is still a work in progress. It's possible that permits can be issued still only for scientific or educational research, rather than to dive centres or to groups for one-off specific activities. So it's possible that permits may be issued again to groups in the future. But as I've said before, it's possible, that we are looking when the situation changes to bringing our permit back up to date. And then there would be the opportunity for experienced divers to participate in that research and not only have the pleasure of diving such a beautiful area, but also take part in the research that Sharklab would be conducting there, and also learning about different species of sharks, skates and rays in that particular area. Lorna, thank you very much. Martin Powell, and have you ever got any reports of illegal diving? Again, I'm guessing you're talking about illegal diving, perhaps around Filfla. Again, the answer is no, not really. The illegal activity that we saw was during the time of the research around Filfla itself. As far as illegal diving in other areas, that's not really the subject of the evening, and I'm not really sure if we do actually get reports of illegal diving. It's not really our remit. As an organisation, our focus is on obviously research, gathering information, sharing information, and not only that, making a difference to education and engagement. And obviously, this open session this evening, the first of a sequence, we hope, is really there to try and engage you and get you also involved. If you want to, participate in the activities of the organisation. At the moment, it's a little bit complicated due to the current COVID situation, but ordinarily, education, awareness, snorkel activities, dive activities, boat-based activities, fish market gathering activities, anatomical studies, all sorts of things happen within the organisation, with the ultimate aim of creating a greater understanding of these beautiful animals that exist in our territorial waters, and not only our waters, but the waters of the Mediterranean, the waters of the world, and everything that we can do to better understand them will essentially make a difference, not just on our doorstep, but for migratory species on many people's doorsteps. What we can do here in Malta can have an effect halfway around the world, if not in other places around the world, because many species don't stay in the same place, they travel. Okay. In answer to Gary, have you seen Dusky Groupers near Filfla? Yes, seen many. In fact, I've seen a number of different species of groupers around Filfla, but I won't tell you where they are because people aim for them because they're unfortunately a spear fisherman's favourite. But Dusky Groupers of a variety of sizes, from small to very large. In fact, larger species in general I've seen around there, again, because it's not so commonly people don't tend to go there, so they're not disrupted, they're not interfered with, the environment is a lot calmer, so species tend to flourish. Okay. What type of fish have you seen? Many. Far too many just to sit here and give you a list. What I would recommend is that at a certain point after the presentation, probably the next couple of days, the reports that we generated for Filfla will actually be available to download. We'll speak with Roslyn, our digital media coordinator, to actually upload the PowerPoint so it can be downloaded, along with the 3 observational reports, which can also be downloaded. So they are public reports anyway. So if you want to have a look, you'll see the methodology behind the research at Filfla, as well as details of what we're seeing, images of what we're seeing, etc., etc. Have you seen scorpionfish and lionfish? I've only seen a lionfish in an aquarium, and scorpionfish, you can see them in many different areas around the Maltese Islands and around Filfla at a variety of different depths. Our seas actually hold an abundance of marine life. Sometimes you just have to be in the right place at the right time. So, we as an organisation have been blessed by being able to spend 3 years observing the waters around Filfla. And it's fair to say that it's like no other place around the Maltese Islands. It is beautiful. It is an area which really needs a little bit more looking at. We really need to get back there, and we really need to kind of say, sharks might breed here one day. So let's make this island a place suitable. Okay. I saw a little question coming there. Have you seen stingrays? Yes, I've seen many. Thank you, Kaya. I've seen stingrays in Golden Bay, and I've seen stingrays around Filfla by the plenty. Many. Jennifer, recommendations for recreational dives in Malta. There are many different dive sites around Malta, and there are many different areas around Malta in which you can snorkel and you can observe, a really nice variety of marine life. You want a favourite? I have to say Filfla has to be the top of my list, but it's not such an easy place to get to now. Filfla by far outweighs any other dive that I've ever done around Malta. Many people say Chikawa is beautiful. Diving Umel Farud off Widiziri is beautiful. Filfla is special. It's very special. Now, unfortunately, we're now almost out of time. Quick question from Cody. What's the most poisonous or venomous fish you've seen around Filfla? It would probably have to be a scorpion fish. So it's possible that there were other venomous fish, maybe weaver fish down there, which are also venomous. But, the most important thing when it comes to research and diving and enjoying the waters around Malta and around Filfla is we observe, we take pictures, but we don't touch. So we could be observing the most venomous species on the planet in front of us, but we're not at risk. We're simply existing in the same space. And it has to be our, it's a privilege that we have the opportunity to actually come from the land and explore the beauty of the waters around not only Malta, but around the oceans and the seas on this planet. It's a privilege because we don't exist there. We simply go there as travelers. So what we leave there should be minimal. And what we take away is memories. I'd like to thank everybody for attending the session this evening. As I say, we will actually post the PowerPoint and the video links and the references on the website in the next coming days. If anybody has any additional questions they might want to ask or pose, then please feel free to type them in the chat for the next couple of minutes. I'll leave the room open for a couple of minutes, even though the presentation will finish. But if you want to, please feel free to post them on Facebook, either in Facebook in the group, Sharklab Malta Facebook page, or Sharklab Malta group. Or if you want to, as I say, find out more information about the potential of going to Filfla in the future, you can always send an email to info@sharklabmalta.org. Or alternatively, if you want to get involved with the organisation, perhaps become a member of the organisation and support the research work we do, please feel free to check out the website where you can sign up as members. You can even buy t-shirts, you can send virtual birthday cards, you can do a whole variety of things in order to support the organisation. But I'd like to just take this opportunity just one more time to thank you for attending. Thank you, Kaylin, for the idea behind this session in the first place. Thank you for the committee for supporting the putting the presentation together. And I look forward to hopefully seeing you and speaking to each and every one of you, hopefully in the near future. So in the meantime, thank you for attending the session. And like I say, the references will be available on the website after a day or two, should we say? So you can actually take them and follow those links. So thank you very much. And I look forward to speaking to you very soon. Thank you all.
Thank you.